Hey folks, David Stewart here. Let's talk a little bit about, believe it or not, Dr. Seuss having his books get banned. Dr. Seuss, that's right. So if you're wondering which 6 books, I'll tell you which 6 books were banned right now. They are, and to think I saw it on Mulberry Street, If I Ran the Zoo, McElligot's Pool, On Beyond Zebra, Scrambled Egg Super, and The Cat's Quizzer. So those 6 books were depublished. Now there's 3 big areas I want to talk about for this video that I think are relevant and that I want people to think about. The first one is the relationship between mega corporations and how they don't really act independently. Second one is really Dr. Seuss himself. And then the third one is intellectual property, which is a broad term that includes both copyright and trademark. And I'll talk about some of the distinctions between those and what that means for what we have going on here. So when I say these books are banned, I'm using that term. People on the internet are upset that people are using that term. Here's how it went down. Basically, there's the Dr. Seuss Enterprises, which is a company that holds Dr. Seuss's copyrights. Copyright in the United States extends past the death of the creator, either 70 or 90 years. I think they extended it again recently. Basically, every time Mickey Mouse is going to come into the public domain, meaning that anybody can make derivative works of him, suddenly the copyright gets extended by Congress, and you can guess who is actually behind that and would like for copyright to exist basically in perpetuity, and that would, of course, be Disney. So I think it's either death plus 70 or 90 years. He died in 1991, which means all of his books are still going to be under copyright for decades to come. He had no biological children, so it's not his children holding these copyrights or making decisions there like you had, say, with Christopher Tolkien managing his father's estate after the death of J.R.R. Tolkien. Seuss had no biological children, so Susan Brandt is the person who runs this. I presume this decision basically came down to her. Don't really know who owns that. I've had some people say that the publisher owns Dr. Seuss Enterprises, but I haven't been able to confirm that, so I'm not going to say a yay or nay on that. It is private, and we're not sure where the money goes, but apparently Dr. Seuss made like $10 million as a dead person last year just through licensing. So this enterprise exists to license out the copyright. So to either publish the books or to, if somebody wants to make an adaptation like the Green Eggs and Ham show or Cat in the Hat something, then they manage that sort of licensing fee or put Cat in the Hat on merchandise. All of that is managed by this company. Now, so they decided to depublish these books or take these books down. Well, what happened was, as soon as this happened, literally within hours of this announcement, on Dr. Seuss's birthday, no less, they announced that they were getting rid of 6 of his books on his birthday. Amazon stopped selling the books. Not only did they stop selling the books, even though undoubtedly there are copies of the books that have been printed and exist in a warehouse and will be destroyed because that's the nature of how publishing actually works. A lot of people don't realize this, but a large portion of the hardback books that are printed get destroyed. They get burned or shredded and turned into toilet paper by the publisher because they don't sell. So a bookstore will take the dust jacket off of them and send them back, and the publisher destroys them and writes it off as a loss. Just one of those reasons why you open a book and it says if this was sold without a cover or whatever, then it could have been reported damaged or destroyed. That's because if they don't sell a copy of the book, they send it back to the publisher and the publisher destroys it, and then they can write it off on their taxes. So anyway, there's going to be physical copies of these books that they are going to then destroy in order to ensure that people can't get their hands on them. So Amazon not only stopped selling the new copies, which they probably have in a warehouse and will probably be destroyed, but they stopped allowing third-party sellers to sell used copies of these books that have been in print and now for 50, 60, 70 years. So you can't get a used copy. At the same time, eBay was banning sellers for selling used copies of these books. So that is the 2 biggest places where you're going to get to buy copies of these books. Now, I checked on Barnes & Noble. You can't buy them on Barnes & Noble either. So all of both of the major big booksellers, which is going to be Amazon and Barnes & Noble, you can't buy these books. That means all of those bookstores are probably not going to have them either. They can't get new copies from the publisher. The book has been banned, and you can't even sell it online through the normal channels. Now, you could still sell it at a local used bookstore, but within a couple hours of that announcement, the prices were going up and up and up on eBay. eBay killed all the listings and started banning people for trying to sell these banned books. So the books basically are banned for all intents and purposes. You're not going to be able to acquire these books through the normal cheap means of the internet. You can still get it hand to hand. You can still get it off a used bookstore. You can still trade them on Craigslist. But for 99% of the book market, these books don't exist. This is also, I should mention, why selling on Amazon is such a big thing and being banned from Amazon is such a big thing. 99% of my book sales come through Amazon, not through the 20 other sellers that I have. Now, I do sell ebooks through Barnes & Noble. I do sell physical books through Barnes & Noble. I do sell books through various other things like, I couldn't tell you all the other different little booksellers there. But 99% of it comes through Amazon. So if you're not on Amazon selling your book, you're basically not in the book market. You're not selling books at all because those alternative channels are just not going to add up to a lot of users buying your books. So if something's banned off Amazon, it's effectively banned. So I would say it's an effective ban of these books. And so what we see is that these corporations always act in tandem. The mega corporations do not act in a competitive manner. Otherwise, what would happen is if Amazon banned the book, Barnes & Noble would be pushing that they still sold the book because they're a competitor. But instead, they act in concert. They do things which actually are unprofitable for them. It's unprofitable to stop selling books. It's unprofitable to decide to destroy books which you already have on hand. It's unprofitable to, if your competitor decides to stop selling something, that you will not then sell it. Now, there might be, why did they ban the books? So before I go any further, they banned them because they contain racial stereotypes from the 1950s and 60s. Very old thing. So a Chinese person holding chopsticks with a bowl of rice, or a person riding a camel with, attire that maybe looks like some kind of stereotypical Arabian or something like that. I looked at these images myself. None of them look offensive to me at all. I'm not from those cultures, though, so you can have a different opinion. But these aren't things that were untypical for the time. These aren't things that really are drastically offensive now. At the worst, you could say is like, well, Dr. Seuss had never really been to China and seen what people maybe dressed like in China when he wrote the book. It's not like such a big crime. It doesn't reinforce like evil. It's not saying Chinese people are inhuman or something like that. It's not actually racist in the way that racist used to be, which was to say that someone's bad for being of a certain race. So anyway, that's why they're taken down. So unless you're afraid of some horrible moral slapback from not selling Dr. Seuss, popular children's book author, there'd really be no reason. Somebody somewhere on the line would say like, well, we're going to sell the Dr. Seuss books and we're going to make some money off of it. But they act in tandem. And you see the same thing with social media. When somebody gets banned off social media, they get banned off of all the platforms at once. Alex Jones disappeared off the internet in one day because all of the companies worked together to do what they want to do in concert. They all work together. So it's the same thing. If Amazon bans it, eBay's going to ban it, Barnes & Noble's going to ban it, everybody's going to ban it because they don't act competitively. So the idea that there's this competitive free market when it comes to mega corporations is not really correct. They're more like oligopolies or cartels that work together. So they're more like corporate cartels. So that's the big thing there. If you get a book banned from Amazon, expect it to be banned everywhere else. This was a decision by the copyright holder to ban the books, not the publisher. So that leads me, actually, I'm going to talk about the second area, which is Dr. Seuss himself. Now, some of the pushback on the, I guess, I don't know what to call it, like the conservative side is against a little bit Dr. Seuss himself. He was maybe more on the left-leaning side of things politically, and that shows in some of his books. He wrote books that today would be considered anti-racist, but are now considered bad. Things like the stars on the Sneetches, about how people should be colorblind. Now that is, that's anathema to the current racial discussion. The idea that it doesn't matter what we look like. Oh, it does matter now. It's like we're back to some other view of race than what was popular in the mid-20th century, which is to view everybody as human. We're all humans. He tended to view, I'm trying to remember which one it was, like butter side up, butter side down. Communism and capitalism are just the same thing. So a lot of people didn't like that about him. Now, a lot of people don't know about his personal life. I mentioned he didn't have any biological children. He was married twice. And I only bring this up because other people are, talking about it, or this is new information to them. He started an affair with his second wife while he was married to his first wife. His first wife had cancer at the time, and she committed suicide as a result of that affair. Then he married his second wife. His second wife was also married at the time when they began the affair. So he has 2 stepchildren from her and her first marriage. So that episode in his personal life tends to degrade people's opinion of him personally. And it's really surprising to me that this hasn't really come up from the left side to dehumanize him, but I expect it will in the future. And so the question that you want to ask is somebody's perhaps bad moral choices in their personal life or questionable moral choices, and we're not going to know all the details of what was going on in his life, obviously, with his first wife or not. Are all those things going to affect whether or not you should read his books? Now, I'm leaving that as an open-ended question, and you can leave a comment down in the comments section, yay or nay. Is the author separate from the work? In other words, can these be good children books made by a person who was, at the very least, imperfect and possibly bad? So I'll leave that for you guys to decide, but I think it is something that is going to happen in the future to eventually dehumanize Dr. Seuss, is to try to break down his personal life. I will say that he traditionally was not a friend of the right, and so the right really is taking up his cause simply because the right is anti-censorship now. So when he's being censored, you are now going to take up for that. So maybe, and because things have shifted, he's probably right-wing now, just like how J.K. Rowling is right-wing now, because the goalposts have shifted, my friends. So anyway, that's his personal life. Now, last thing I want to talk about is copyright, because this is a very interesting situation in terms of copyright, that you have a company which holds the copyright after the death of the author and is deciding what things should be done with the property. If you were going to look at a comparable example, it would be, Tolkien's legacy, managed by his son, Christopher Tolkien. Now, Christopher Tolkien died last year. No sooner did he die than Amazon, trying to make a Lord of the Rings show, retooled it and began reworking it, because the person who maintained Tolkien's estate and said yay or nay over creative projects based on whether it was faithful to his father's vision or not is gone. So that means that you can take the IP, which is established and popular, and wear it as a skin suit. You can do whatever you want with it. So I do not have confidence in the Amazon Lord of the Rings series, or whatever it's going to be, whatever age it's going to take place in, being remotely good or tolerable. It's probably going to be woke garbage. If you are a betting man, that's what I would bet on, is that it's going to be wokeified garbage, because that's what they want to do. They want to buy things which are popular and turn them into their political messaging. Remember, the profit doesn't really matter when it comes to the mega corporate. Maybe profit matters for smaller companies, but to mega corporations, that's kind of secondary. The employees are really thinking about how they can use the corporation to enact their ideological change, how they can spread their ideological messages. So this is interesting situation with Dr. Seuss, because you have the copyright holder deciding to ban the books rather than a publisher or something like that. So presumably, when you have a copyright extending past the death of the author, this is an opportunity to have a Christopher Tolkien situation. If I die and my children are, or my wife, or maybe my wife's gone too and it's my children are in charge of my intellectual property, I want them to maintain the integrity of that property, not just collect royalties from it, but yes, collect royalties from it because I've invested in the book and it's going to continue to sell. So yes, they should inherit my ability to collect those royalties. But what happens if you leave the copyright in the hands of somebody who doesn't care about the integrity of what you've done, and in reality views everything as a licensing opportunity? And that's what we've got with Dr. Seuss. There's a ton of licensing opportunities with it, and they can insert their own moral vision. So Susan Brandt, who's the president of the Dr. Seuss Enterprises, she maybe decided that these 6 books with their isolated, objectionable imagery are not fit to be print or would look bad on the company as a whole and impact their ability to license things going forward. But most likely it's just a moral vision. It's like, this is a portrayal of a Chinese person using stereotypical Chinese things like holding chopsticks and eating rice. I eat rice too, but anyway, so it's stereotypical, so we got to get rid of it because it's bad. So there's a possibility when you leave your copyright in the hands of somebody, they'll choose not to just license your work out to people who don't respect it, but to take your work off. Now, like having your copyright transition to another person after your death means that they can ban your work after you're dead. They can take your work off of the internet. They can take your work out of circulation and ban your book. Now that's weird, is that because they own the copyright, they can decide not to publish it, but you can't decide to publish it because they aren't reneging on their copyright. They still get to hold the copyright, and they can sue you if you want to publish a version of these 6 banned books. They can sue you for copyright violation because they own the copyright. Because they own the copyright, they can also, I guess, decide that no one gets to watch it. It's one of the reasons why you'll never see Song of the South released officially again, is because it contains something that some people find offensive. Therefore, it's going to be locked away basically forever. Now, the last thing I want to say here, besides this strange irony of rather than preserving somebody's work, you use the extended copyright past the death of the author to quell the public's ability to view that work at all, to view the art at all. Very bizarre to think about. But that's a consequence of viewing copyright as some sort of legal thing that you can own and transfer ownership between other people as if it's, as if it's like a physical object, right? So the last thing is the difference between trademark and copyright. And I want to talk about this even though it's not specifically exactly related to this topic, in that one of the main corporate strategies for maintaining control over a franchise is not through copyright, but rather through trademark. And these are two different things. Trademark would be like the McDonald's arches, right? Or the word McDonald's for a restaurant. That's a trademark of the McDonald's Corporation. Now, why does it own that trademark? That means you can't call your restaurant McDonald's and you can't put golden arches on your restaurant unless you are buying the right to do that from the McDonald's Corporation. Why would they have that? Well, it has to do with brand confusion. They spend a lot of money advertising the McDonald's Corporation and having specific food at all the McDonald's. If you just open a restaurant, call it McDonald's, it's like you're getting free advertising paid for by the McDonald's Corporation. And then people come in and think that it's going to be McDonald's food, and maybe it's bad. Maybe you're giving them like rat meat or something on their hamburgers. And so then they come out and they're like, McDonald's sucks. I ate at this McDonald's over here and they served rat meat burgers and there was mice running on the floor. And it's like, that's not actually McDonald's. They're just using our name. They're leeching off of our name and selling you bad food. So it harms the brand, and it basically leeches off of their investment in terms of advertising. So that's what trademark is supposed to exist for, and that makes a lot of sense. You want consumers to, especially with something that is spread over a large market, you don't want them to be confused as to what is what. You want them to have an idea of like McDonald's is McDonald's and I can expect this experience. A Sony PlayStation 5 is a Sony PlayStation 5 is a Sony PlayStation 5. They're all the same. I know what I'm buying based on the words that are attached to it. The way that the mega corporations such as Disney capture intellectual property forever is through trademark. So one of the things you'll notice if you're good at reading fine print is you'll find things like Han Solo is a registered trademark of the Disney or Buena Vista Incorporated. You're like, what? How is Han Solo a trademark? The name Han Solo is a trademark, meaning you can't put Han Solo on a book and sell it. Even 100 years from now, when maybe Star Wars itself is in the public domain and you can watch the movie for free if you want to, or copy it for free, make derivative works if you want, you couldn't put Han Solo on the cover of a book. You'd get sued because that's a trademark of the Disney Corporation. Wookiee is a trademark. Vulcan is a trademark of like CBS and Viacom, right? Whoever owns the Star Trek one. It's actually split between two companies. I think it's Paramount and CBS because they split it. Anyway, one has TV rights, one has this, but Vulcan is a trademark of that. So if you're using the word Vulcan, then you're violating trademark. So they find ways to capture franchises basically forever. And one of the interesting ones is there's a comic book that's out now called The Cimmerian. Now it's a Conan comic because Conan the Barbarian stories by Robert E. Howard are mostly in the public domain now, which means anyone can create derivative works from them, like comics. However, the word Conan and Conan the Barbarian is a trademark owned by a company that just holds the trademarks for Conan and licenses them out. Marvel gets to make Conan comics now. Dark Horse made them for a while. Marvel made them before, the famous runs by John Buscema and others. You can't make a Conan. Now, you could make a Conan comic. It can have the Conan character in it. It can be an adaptation of Robert E. Howard's Conan stories. But you can't call it Conan the Barbarian because Conan is a trademark. Now, you can call it the Cimmerian. That's what you can call it, and you can totally get away with that. But if you try to call it Conan the Barbarian, you're going to have problems. And I think whoever made the comic might actually have had some legal friction trying to make a derivative work of a public domain work, which would be some of the Conan stories. So anyway, I thought I'd bring that up because this is one of the ways that it makes it very difficult for people to freely access things. Once a book gets banned, if it's under copyright, the corporations that own the copyright can decide to ban it. So again, corporate censorship is the bigger danger, not government censorship. Or perhaps we could say corporations are quite willing to censor things on behalf of state interests. It doesn't require the state to do anything. The corporation makes it so you can't buy or sell it, then it's effectively banned. You could maybe find a copy at some yard sale that people have forgotten that it's a banned book, but you can't acquire it at will when you want to. And that's the big message that I want to get across here. So thanks so much for watching this long little video. I do appreciate it. I'm an author. I write books. I don't know if you still get this one for free, but this is a good one. I think I have some hardback versions of this one coming out. I'm going to check them out soon. Water of Awakening. I'm going to be publishing the third book in this series this year. And what's a great one? If you want to work on your work habits, Keys to Prolific Creativity, you can check that one out. $2.99 for the ebook on Amazon, and I think the paperback's pretty cheap too. It's like $5 or $6, maybe $7. Paperbacks are a little bit more expensive. And I will have book 3 of this series coming out soon too, the Moonsong series. So you can get City of Silver and Tyrant's Gallow. Both of these are available now. So thanks so much, and have a great day. I'll see you next time.